Hi, guys. Super excited to be here today with my co-host Brad. I'm Daniel Schaefer. I work for DataRobot. I'm a sales director, and we're talking today about MLOps trends. It's going to be a super exciting live session here on LinkedIn. Um, a couple of housekeeping items. This is going to be an interactive session, so if you have any kind of questions, there's a little box on the right side. Please put your questions in there. We also have a couple of questions prepared for you guys to answer, so it's going to be very interactive. A little bit about me, myself, my background. I've been working in MLOps for the last couple of years. I have a big data analytics background. Been in technology for 20 years. Super excited to talk about MLOps and some of the latest trends. And with me today also is Brad from Omdia. Brad, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Hi, everybody. Good to be with you today. I am an analyst. My name is Brad Shimon. I basically work within Omdia, which is a part of Informatech, looking at technologies that go into building AI in the enterprise. And while we get going, actually, I would love to hear from everybody out there. Where are you from? Hi, Trey. How you doing? Tell us where you're dialing in from. I'd love to know. So back to me. 'Cause it's all about me. I've been in this industry for about 20 years, and I'm a twin to Daniel in that I've been doing big data and analytics since 1990 for me. And it's been fascinating to watch over the years how it's evolved. And for us, for me working at Omdia as an analyst, we like to look at numbers and see what enterprises are doing. And so we do things like take the pulse of companies that are building AI to ask them, how it's going. And the last time we polled a good number of folks, the majority of them said, "Yep, we are absolutely sold on AI and how beneficial it can be for us." But when we asked them how many of them were actually running that at scale across their business, meaning not just for a single use case or for a departmental use case, less than 10%, as in 7%, said that they had done so. And that's interesting to it's an interesting statistic because we certainly have available tech to help us out to get over that hump. And so, that's why I'm really happy to be talking to Daniel today about MLOps, because I believe, for me, that idea of taking what we already figured out in DevOps and IT and applying it to machine learning to operationalize it is absolutely the way to go and an important area of investment. So, Daniel, you guys. One of the areas that we look at in particular is data preparation. And that's something that for myself, I feel is kind of the starting point of AI.
Right.
You have to know your data, right?
Right.
And when we ask people, we actually have a tool that's called the Readiness Barometer. And we work with a little over 500 companies. And we just ongoing annually talk to them about how they're doing. And I got some stats for you guys. 27% of them would consider themselves to be beginners when it comes to data in support of AI. 51% they said that they had actually had some sort of governance in process, which is a topic Daniel and I are going to come back to in a minute. And only 31% of them said they actually were benchmarking this that we're actually using both structured and unstructured data for their AI. So there's a lot of room to grow. Daniel, what do
Right.
you see from your perspective at
Right.
DataRobot? Oh, yeah.
Right. So, data prep is huge. If you think about the productivity from a data science perspective, there is a shortage of data scientists across the world. So right now, tools are of the essence to help data scientists to prepare the data, because in order for you to write a machine learning algorithm, first of all, you have to prepare the data. And as Brett mentioned, you have structured, unstructured data, you have real time, you have batch processing, you have a variety of data sets that come from multiple streams. And you, as a data scientist, are going to have to understand how to structure the data and make it accessible for you to even be able to write a machine learning algorithm. Because if the data is not, number one, if you don't have a lot of data and if you don't have clean data, you're not going to be able to write a good machine learning algorithm. So with that, the data prep is going to be key element in the initial process of the life cycle for MLOps. I have a question for the audience. So maybe you can see it on the screen over here. So how much time do you spend on preparing data to create a machine learning algorithm? And this is something that we see, across the board. It's going to take sometimes 60%, 70%. It also depends in regards to um, the different persona. If you are a data engineer or you are a machine learning engineer, you're data scientist or business analyst. So if you can just put your answer on the chat, and while we're looking at the different answers, Brett, what do you see out there?
Yeah, I see that magic 80% number as well, and it's funny because so much of the mystique of being a data scientist is wrapped up in algorithms and models, and how you build those. And data is seen almost as a secondary, troublesome sort of. Oh, I've got to make sure I've got my data so that I can then start focusing on the cool stuff like feature engineering. And so yeah, the 80% rule, I feel like it's actually, oh wow, Pravat, you are golden. 50% is great. But it's so much of that is tied up in the mundane, if you will, work of cleaning data, making sure it's valid and that it's accurate. But it's important, right, Daniel? You can't,
Right.
as you say, you can't do good AI without good data.
Yep. And that kind of leads you into the next step in the progress of machine learning trend. Once you have the data, and once you have a tool that you feel comfortable with to prepare the data, then the next one is going to be, okay, what kind of tools are you using to help you with the creation of a machine learning model, right? So there is a trend called AutoML. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it is basically a system that will automatically challenge you the best model that you have to create a new model. And the new model then will be perform better at some point due to model decay, a concept drift, or model drift, right? So now, Brett, what do you think? Have you heard that topic, the AutoML, that phrase, and in your site, and how has that been effective?
Yeah, I think it's one of those trends that started out as something that was just for data scientists to find the best algorithm for their neural networks. And the idea caught on. Wow, we can actually use AI to help build AI. What does that mean? Well, as we were just talking about, you can start extending the value of AutoML across the entire ML lifecycle. And so, DataRobot actually is one of the first companies that actually productized this idea of AutoML, and it's part and parcel to everything that happens inside of that platform. But it's just now, I think, starting to appear across that life cycle in supportive areas like data preparation.
Right.
It's like fantastic to think that it's not just about searching for the best algorithm. It's, do I have the right data? Do I know where this came from? Is it something that has been versioned? Do I have the right kind of join between the tables I'm using to pull together? Is the data timely and accurate? Well, that is a space that can be searched by a neural architecture, right?
Yep. Exactly. And if you think about all the different tools that are out there, you have, R, Python, you have a variety of data science workbenches that you see that can help the data science community to create that model. That's also a challenge. So you, as a data scientist, have to keep up with each individual machine library, right? And then also with any kind of new data science workbench that's going to be out there, right? And as you see over here, some of the question that we're going to ask you, what are some of the languages and tools that you are using to develop a model? I mentioned R, I mentioned Python. What are some of the other tools that you see out there?
Oh, I'd love to hear about Julia. Is anyone out there using Julia? Because I keep hearing that it's something that's kind of well suited to AI. So I'd love to know if anyone's playing with that out
Yep.
there.
And while we collect the answers over here, we have a question from Pravat in regards to the concept of how AutoML is going to help with the concept drift. Concept drift, AutoML is going to help you by understanding when concept drift occurs. And then we'll talk about that more later here in regards to governance. Just having a model, that the model will going to be decay, it's going to be concept drift and also a model drift. And by understanding and monitoring the model based on the governance, you will be able to then replace it, and you can use AutoML as part of that to have then what's called, we call it a DataRobot, a challenger champion concept, where you constantly challenge that most recent model, because we know over time it will decay.
Yeah, indeed. By the way, I'm with Timothy. I'm a Python guy, but I do absolutely respect the folks like Pravat here with PySpark. There are two types of people in the world. There are the linear people, the sequential people, and the parallel people. And obviously, Pravat is a parallel kind of guy. But yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, that there are so many tools that are I think very applicable to AI, that it comes down to picking the right thing for the right project with the right team. And that can change from week to week, day to day, can't it?
Yep. And I want to mention something that Timothy has over here, the SAS Studio. So what you see over here, you have PySpark, Scala, Go, Python, SAS. So what you have is exactly what we see a lot across a lot of enterprise organizations. You have multiple tools in the organization that a data scientist is going to feel most comfortable with. So now the challenge is that you have each individual data science tool that then have to have its own MLOps pipeline, because a model developed in SAS is not going to be run on the same pipeline that you have with Python or a PySpark or other workbenches. So there's not a common standard. So companies are refactoring code to go from Python to R, or go from different data work science benches to another, for them to go ahead and create one unified MLOps pipeline. Have you seen something like this too, Brad?
Oh yeah, it's funny. I think the number I saw, Anaconda, if you guys know who that is, they are basically a library manager, and they do a nice annual survey, and they found that like almost half of every project gets refactored either into or out of Python. And just to your point, it is because you have this entire pipeline that isn't just the experimentation in a Jupyter notebook, but the actual things like unit testing, performance testing, security testing, all of that has to happen before anything goes live. And as a part of that, you have to stress test what's the response I need is performance and latency. What does that look like? Well, if Python can do it, great. If not, got to refactor. So it's like you were talking about with all these tools. It really comes down to picking a platform that allows you to use the tools that you need to get the job done, like PySpark, let's say, but to not penalize you in disrupting that entire the visibility into that entire pipeline. And that's something I think actually we should talk about, that governance of that entire process.
Yeah, I think one thing to mention also is, from a complexity perspective, is also once you build a model in each individual data science workbench, to productionize that model is also difficult, because depending on what kind of machine learning model you have, NLP, you need maybe CPU or GPU. And that can be also challenged, because now all of a sudden you talk about a Kubernetes cluster, and there are 82 different Kubernetes flavors right now in the open. So I mean, as a data scientist, you don't really understand Docker containers or Kubernetes. That's going to be more from a DevOps
I don't
and
want to hear
machine
about
learning. Yeah,
it.
from a DevOps or machine learning perspective. I mean, it's even more challenging. So when we talk about MLOps, it's not just only to create the machine learning algorithm, but then put it in production, and that's what Brett mentioned. The governance is going to come in, and I saw that question from Pravat in regards to data drift.
Mm.
So that you have to find um, some sort of framework for you to understand how to measure a data, how to measure the machine learning model in production to understand about the data drift, right? And to track the data drift and to have some sort of governance. So I'm going to ask the audience over here, do you think model governance is essential for enterprise organizations?
Yeah, and by governance, we're really talking about that entire gamut, that whole spectrum of everything from security on to ethics, and that's a lot of territory to cover, isn't it, Daniel? For any
Hmm.
company.
Yep.
We
No, no.
actually asked, what in that barometer I mentioned, we asked our practitioners, are how are they measuring success for AI? How are they measuring whether or not it's ethical? And just tick over half of them have any sort of KPIs and measurements in place, which is terrifying. But
Hmm.
it's easy to see why that is the case, given what we've been talking about here with the complexity of that tool chain
Yeah.
to build out this life cycle.
Yep. And it's not so much also about bias and fairness. It's also about just the metrics. The
Mm.
importance of the metrics in terms of how does the model perform in production, and um, you know is it how can you even measure that, and what kind of tool sets are out there can help you measuring that, and measuring the data drift, and when the model is going to be in decay, when it's going to be concept or model drift, and what are the indicators. And a lot of companies look at it and say, okay, we're just going to go ahead and build something. Well, if you're a company like an Uber or Airbnb, I mean, you have 500, 1,000 machine learning engineers sitting in the back. You can actually build some framework like that. I think Uber has a framework called Michelangelo. You can look
Yeah.
that up.
How long did it take them to build that? I mean, this is an engineering effort on the scale of a commercial software provider.
And then how are you going to maintain it, right?
Mm.
So that's the huge problem that we see in the industry right now, that a lot of people, a lot of enterprise organizations want to go and build themselves on like AWS SageMaker or something else, or another cloud provider, and have huge problems with um, building that. And then in the end, they're going to be just another AWS consultant instead of really solving a business use case for the company.
Yeah, indeed. It's funny, in talking about this, it seems to me that for practitioners to succeed here, what they need to do is to first build an understanding of what they're building,
Hmm.
right? And that's the how you get to governance. And
Right.
from my viewpoint, what I see as being the route to get there is to adopt this idea of observability. So not just like monitoring, not just looking at log files, but to look at the totality of this platform and the models that are running on it and are deployed on AWS, on GCP, on the edge, on premises, and see all of them and see all of the
Right.
artifacts that go
Right.
along with them. Because
Yeah.
monitoring just gives you the what happened, why did this fail. Observability gives you the ability to see the why behind that, the root cause, the stuff that doesn't appear broken but is broken.
Yep. And to that point, Brett, you bring a really good point right now, Brett, because it is super important to understand the model governance and the bias of fairness of models. Because if not, look what happened to very recent in the news, Zillow, for example,
Ooh.
where you put too much trust in an AI model and less monitoring and governance. I mean, the company had to lay off thousands of employees, and like a third of their business is have to of their sales are shot. And look at the stock price right now, right? So that's just one example right now in terms of putting too much trust in a machine learning model and not understanding the drift and the concept.
Yeah, yeah. For me, the Zillow is a cautionary tale about the dangers of banking on an algorithm that you either willfully know is not doing what's representative in the real world, doesn't reflect the data, or is just didn't pay attention to the data or
Hmm.
ignored it and said, yeah, house prices are when they're not. That is a danger.
Yep.
Another cautionary tale recently that caught my attention was this Ask Delphi. If everyone's heard of that, it's a prototype research tool that took this basically crowdsourced opinions from using Mechanical Turk, AWS's Mechanical Turk, and the data they used was supposed to be representative of everyone to be able to have this Ask Delphi tell
Hmm.
you if something is ethical. Like if I rob a bank, is that bad? And what it turned out doing was reflecting the people, and the data reflects the humans. And so when it asks them questions like, if a white person comes toward you at night, is that safe? And says absolutely. If a black person comes towards you, it says no, that's unsafe. And so you have to know the data. You have to
Right.
have full trust in the data. And it goes back to what we were talking about with data prep and starting right with data.
Yep, and you see it over and over again that there are no new governance, regulatory compliance. Where actually banks, there's one bank here. I live in Texas. There's one bank over here. We got fined 85 million dollars last year for risk management failure. And that's going to become more and more common. If you look at the GDPR compliance, Data Privacy Act in New York and in California, that people are um, fed up with the way organizations are handling their privacy and their data. So huge fines are being fined to financial institution and others who don't understand how models in production are going to be governed correctly, with trusted AI.
Yeah, we can't wait for legislation, can we? I mean, we know that it's evolving rapidly, and that's difficult to keep up with. But as that example shows us, is that it is, it is the burden is upon the company doing AI to make sure that they can take action when needed, when something goes wrong, or to even know when something goes wrong, and to
Good.
take action.
Yep, exactly. There's actually a survey out there that Algorithmia did. It's an annual survey, came out in for the past couple of years, where well, we have 400 organizations ask about their MLOps strategy, and you can see. I think there's a link coming up over here where you can go ahead and then click on it and subscribe to and get a copy of the survey. Super informative in terms of what are the trends are, the top 5 trends in regards to infrastructure, in regards to the wide use of Kubernetes and running machine learning models across geographic regions, also security and regulatory compliance. And one thing is kind of automation of the MLOps pipeline. I've seen organizations who have successful done um, we have successful, really implemented AI strategies where, now listen to this. This is really interesting. You can't even start developing a machine learning model if you cannot articulate how you're going to maintain and run that model in production and understand the financial impact and outcome of that model. That is perfect. A lot of companies that I've seen doing it completely the opposite. They're just developing a bunch of machine learning model, and it all sits in the shelf. 90% never make it in production, and a lot of time, effort, and money is wasted on the development and not realized in productionizing the algorithms.
Yeah, that's why we're seeing this uptick in observability companies. DataRobot does it, but there's pure plays like Arise and Y Labs and Fiddler and those guys, and what they're basically giving you the ability to do is to have that to say this is the objective of this model. This is how we're going to measure it. This is when we know it's right and when it's wrong. And then that actually maps directly to the MLOps platform such that you can actually take action when needed to, whether that's simply just cycling out and promoting a
Mhm.
challenger model, or whether it's
Right,
basically shutting it down. Or and what I
right,
think is really cool, by the way, is being able to have human oversight, to have
right.
humans come in and take charge. Yeah.
Yep, yeah. So it comes down to really using technology when technology is there. There's a great book out there that I read. It's called Prediction Machines. It will tell you that the human has to be in the loop. That the machine can make a prediction, but the human has to decide how to apply the prediction.
Yeah.
So you cannot take the human out. Not for now. Maybe in the far future, but not for now.
Yeah, definitely for labeling, absolutely. I think that machines can help us with outliers when you have a model that throws an outlier response, an inference that doesn't seem right but would normally go through, like
Yeah,
denying somebody a loan when maybe you shouldn't, and then a human can come in and
yeah,
and
right.
fix that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's really the crutch of every organization, and it's going to be interesting. So here's what I see: the organizations who understand how to productionize machine learning algorithm and understand how to harness the value, those are the organizations who will be so far ahead. And organizations that we already seen, organizations like Google, for example. Even if you create another search engine right now, Google has past 10 years so much history and so much data, you will never
Yeah, why reinvent that?
going to catch them. So the companies right now who invest effectively in AI will have a huge advantage. And I'm not going to say any names, but there are some financial institution who have tried to do it on their own, and then have found the way to automate the process, and they are much more successful than their competitor.
Yeah,
Yep.
what stuck with me is this phrase of, if the cloud is the enabler and the data is a driver, then AI is the differentiator for
Yep.
things like digital transformation.
Yep. Okay, we're winding down. We only have a couple minutes left, guys. If you have any last questions, please post it in the chat. Thanks again, you guys, for listening to us. Appreciate that. You can go and reach out to us on via LinkedIn. Um, and for Brett and me, we're available to ask any other question that you might have. It's been super helpful, super exciting. Um, Please follow us on LinkedIn. Collectively we post a lot of interesting posts on LinkedIn. It's a super exciting topic. There's actually a I would encourage you to be part of what's called the MLOps community. It's
Mm.
a huge, very informative a community that you can be a part of, and it's really in the beginning. So we're learning, and the objective of this is to kind of pass it on and help you to be much more effective in your MLOps journey.
Yeah, if data science is a team sport, then MLOps is a community, for that team.
Yep. I'm not sure if there's going to be a recording. If there's one, then we're going to send out the link on the bottom. Okay. Yeah. There will be a recording. So just it's going to be the same link. Just give it a little bit time. Thanks so much, Brad, for helping me out, answering those questions, and being a great co-host.
Yeah, same to you, Daniel. Thanks a lot, and thanks to everyone for tuning in and talking to us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.